Thank you for joining us today for our webinar, Discover Impuls Deutsch Second Edition, New Features, Enhanced Learning. And again, my name is Catherine Frenzel-Luke. I am a World Languages sales consultant at Cloud World Languages, and I currently work in the Midwestern region. We already went through the housekeeping rules, so let me go ahead and introduce our speaker. So I'm excited to introduce Dr. Nico Traxdorf. Dr. Traxdorf is an associate professor of German at the University of Rhode Island, specializing in interdisciplinary language education, diversity, inclusion, and intercultural competence. As a co-director of the German International Engineering Program, he has helped hundreds of students prepare for international study and internship opportunities in German-speaking countries. In recognition of his work, he received the Nelson Brooks Award for Excellence in the Teaching of Culture from ECVL in 2020. He's also the editor and co-editor of both the first and the second editions of Impuls Deutsch Level 1 and 2. So, Dr. Traxdorf, Nico, welcome, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much for the nice introduction. And good evening, everyone. I'm very excited. I see a lot of familiar names in the list, some friends, some collaborators, some people I've worked with, and some unknown names, and I hope I will get to know you. I will be talking into the camera today, which is unusual. Sometimes in the Zoom meetings, you see everyone's faces and everyone's reactions. I don't see that right now, so I'm just going to be talking to you, but I'm very excited for the Q&A at the end, where there will be hopefully be questions that many of them I can answer. This is an exciting day because after 2 years of working on the second edition of Impuls Deutsch and a sabbatical, so really intense work, on the book with the team, it's time to present what we've accomplished and what we have done. And also see a few in the chat attendees who have actually already taught with the prototypes. So in the end, if you have some feedback or things you want to share, please also stay in the room so that you can share your experience at the end. So I want to start not right away with the second edition, but with the first edition, and what the idea of Impuls Deutsch really was in the beginning. So back then, when I was a grad student at the University of Connecticut, I reflected a little bit on my own teaching. And I reflected on the program that I was working for, which had a dual degree in German engineering, and how much the materials that we use in the class reflect what our students are interested in, what they would like to do with their professions later on in life, whether they are engineers or they want to become literary scholars, philosophers, musicians, whatever they want to use the language for, and really think about who are they? Who are our students from that perspective, but also from the perspective of what groups do they belong to? And also thinking about myself as a member of the LGBTQ plus community, how much is what I do in the classroom reflecting my reality as a German speaker? And what about other groups outside of the ones that I'm part of? So I really reflected on who are our students, but also who and what do we talk about? So that started the idea to create a textbook that is interdisciplinary, really looking at what our students are studying and are interested in, intercultural aspects of learning the language, but also was a goal to not just write a book, but to involve as many people as possible in the process, to get as many voices as possible heard, to get as many experts in all these different fields involved as well, having consultants. So that I also like to say in the beginning, the work that I'm presenting today is not my work, it's our work. We've done this together. There's a big list of collaborators that goes from the authors, the guest authors, consultants, and those who did the early access teaching and gave feedback in the first go around with the first edition, and who are teaching right now and give feedback and improve the materials. And that this list of what you see on the slide does not even mention all the community members in the Slack community who had great ideas, who made us think, rethink, and improve. So thank you very much to the community. but also please understand this product, Impuls Deutsch, is see today as something that has been created by a lot of people who were involved, not just me, even though I'm presenting here today. So aside from being inclusive and intercultural, interdisciplinary, we had many, many goals when we started to work on the first edition. We really had the vision to craft a textbook that welcomes all students of all races, ethnicities, sexual orientation, genders, abilities to the community of German speakers, and really engage them in content from various disciplines. We wanted to have a flipped classroom, foster intercultural competence, but also we wanted to remain flexible to allow educators to incorporate their own expertise, which many of us have in many different fields. So we tried to make as much as we could possible, but then also we were at some point reaching the end of the time we had with the book. We produced a few thousand of activities within two years. And at some point we had to think about, okay, what can we accomplish with the first edition? And what can we then do when we revisit the book for the second edition? So for us, the second edition feels a little bit like finishing, doing all the things that we planned to do in the beginning but didn't get to, but now we're doing those. The other thing is that we started with prototype testing at 4 universities, but now 150 schools are teaching and the students are learning with Impuls Deutsch, also including high schools. 10% of those are high schools. So we got a lot of feedback in terms of something being too difficult for one group, but too easy for another group, and kind of finding the mid ground and really seeing how the more teach and learn with the book, the more feedback we get, the more we can improve it, make it better for everyone. And then blink learning. We learned to deal with blink learning and the issues that blink learning had and try to find workarounds for platform issues and licenses. So that has been something that we dealt with the first edition. In the background, we were fighting as a team of authors, and we heard other authors did the same to get a new platform. And some of that we will also talk about today, the new platform that we got. The other thing is that when we wrote the first edition, we had lots of freedom, and we were very lucky to have been working with Ernst Klettsprachen in Germany, who really believed in the concept and what we wanted to accomplish. But there were also restrictions in terms of saying, hey, you can use the gender star, but maybe only in a box, but not throughout the books. If you use non-binary people, maybe only 5 of those across the book. So we had to kind of find the balance between our goals, but also adhering to a traditional publisher who has been around for hundreds of years, right? So kind of finding that balance. So we were very lucky when we got the opportunity that Impuls Deutsch was sold from the German side of CLAT to KWL Language in America, because part of that deal was that it would give us complete freedom. We as an offering team, we could really fulfill our vision that we had, that KWL Languages also believed in. And the oversight that we had were reviewers from our fields, experts, and scholars, right? So I also wanted to use this as an opportunity to say thank you for believing in us to KWL Languages and really letting us develop the book, which means, we are currently writing a book, we're doing the typesetting, we're recording the audios, we're making videos. So this is a really in-house production from the authoring team, and you're part of that as the community in shaping it. Okay, a lot of talk before actually getting to the meat of things and what you're actually here for, but it was important to me to start with making sure this is a community project and you're part of this. What's new in Impuls Deutsch in the second edition? I will talk today about a frequency approach of vocabulary, our completely new vocabulary list, inclusive language that is now used throughout the book. We have been doing that in Impuls Deutsch 2, and I will get to that later, but not yet Impuls Deutsch 1 throughout the book. Updated images for more inclusivity. We have new warm-up weeks. We completely reimagined Impuls Deutsch 2 with 2 sequences. That's completely different, and we will spend some time on that later today. About 30% of activities are new or revised. So a lot is new. This is not just the second edition with a few changed images, but I really mean what I said earlier. We really want to finish the product and really do everything we didn't get to. So we touched almost every activity. We have now tripled the amount of audio material. We have 140 interactive grammar videos, some of which you've seen, some not yet. And of course, last but not least, and I reserved this for the last because I know there will be lots of questions about it, and that is the CLAD World Languages Hub. That is our new platform, so we will be saying goodbye to Blink Learning. Okay, let's talk a little bit about frequency vocabulary and also why this is the very first thing I want to talk about, vocabulary, because we got a lot of feedback. And at Actful, I actually started with these 3 quotes from Amazon reviews, which I quite liked. Because the first review says, I'm a fan and so my students, the teacher perspective of the topics, being inclusive, intersectional in its approach, etc., how engaged the students are. But then we also have some student feedback that say, I had to Google translate every word in the instructions, and I have to often go to other source materials to find the words that I need. And we have to say, that's true. And as one of the mistakes we made with the first edition, we had a lot of voices, we had a lot of people who worked on the book, but it also meant that sometimes someone was writing Unit 4 and the other one Unit 7, and all these words were not always 100% aligned, as you noticed. And as soon as we had thousands of activities, we tried to do that, but we didn't have a systematic approach to look at vocabulary overall. So that was what we really wanted to tackle and what we spent almost half of the time of the 2 years of working on the book on, and that is vocabulary. And I also want to thank Evan Schirmer at this point, because Evan was a Max Cardis Distinguished Professor at URI for a year, and I've worked closely with him, and I learned a lot about vocabulary, the importance of vocabulary, but also correlation studies between vocab size, proficiency, and how to introduce vocabulary. And we really tried to put a lot of that into practice. So first of all, we know there's a strong correlation between vocabulary size and proficiency. The words needed to understand the text is 95%. Recommended words to learn per year is 1,500. Ideally, each word is encountered as 3 times if you memorize the word, or 8 to 10 times if they're new ones. Vocabulary needs to be heard and seen. And we want to, of course, encourage the students to work with academic texts early on, especially in college programs, engage with others. And we learned about proficiency lists. So this is a little bit of a summary of through, a semester spending time with vocabulary, what we've learned and what we wanted to apply to the book and take really seriously. So talking about approaches, there's the functional approach and the frequency-based approach. The functional approach is what's used in most textbooks, and it's dominated if you look especially at European textbooks using the Common European Framework of Reference. You all know the A1, A2, B1, etc. lists that really deal with all language in daily life. But then there's the frequency-based approach, which uses corpus analysis of written texts and focuses on the language that students read. And created frequency-based lists. A similar comparison is BICS and COP that many of you probably have heard: basic interpersonal communication skills, cognitive academic language proficiency, and also if you look at Gibson, distinguish between playground and classroom language. So playing games, taking part in everyday to-day activities, versus classifying, evaluating, generalizing, predicting, etc. And the question to us was a little bit, what do we want from our students? Many textbooks focus on BICS and basic interpersonal communication skills in the beginning, but we have many students who don't have a lot of time in our program and then study abroad or take courses at our partner universities, or want to read authentic texts that are relevant for their other majors. So we kind of decided to what we call use significant and useful vocabulary, which is a little bit of a mix of those 2 approaches. So we are using a frequency-based approach as a focus. We are doing COP from the beginning alongside BICS. We used Chiana's frequency dictionary that ranks all these words based on frequencies. But we also do not want to forget about the lists, because some of our students need to take tests abroad in order to qualify for study abroad, and they are still based on the CEFR lists. And we also want to keep our goal of inclusivity, interdisciplinarity in mind, and I will get to that in a few minutes. And we also want to be flexible enough to really choose vocab that's relevant to our students individually, because everyone has different goals in our class. So how did we do it? So first of all, we used our students. I have two students, Andrew and Nate, who are both dual degree students in German and computer science at URI. And they wrote a tool for me and for the team that can analyze every single word that's been used in the book, every single page, every single activity, everything that's written, and also what the students will say, because we provided that. And then we got an Excel spreadsheet as the output, where every single word is ranked. We see the frequency. As you see here, schreiben is 184 versus Name is 255, emit is 711. But we also see if it's an A1 word or B1 word. And also what it tells us is in which unit the vocabulary has already been learned. And if it hasn't, it's flagged in red. So for example, for this instruction, Feld in Interessen has not been learned yet. Andere in Schreiben, Schreiben was in 5, Personen was learned in Unit 10, but these two words have not been learned yet. So we did this with every single activity, with every single page, to identify every single word that has not been learned yet. Something that we tried to do with the first edition. But it's, again, with thousands of activities and no tool, it was difficult at some point to keep track which word was really used and which word was not. So now we identified it. We knew which word has been used, how many times, if it was within a sentence, and we asked these questions. But then we also had to keep inclusivity and interdisciplinarity in mind. For example, sometimes gender neutral or generally inclusive words are less frequent than binary words. So, for example, Lehrkraft is not as frequent as Lehrer oder Lehrerin. So we have to make a choice here. And also, there might be students that might be less, that are relevant for our students, but maybe they're not as frequently ranked, as frequently used in language. But for our students, if they do music, there's a specific set of vocab that's important to them, versus the engineer, versus the literary studies and cultural studies students. So something to keep in mind. So I want to give you some examples of what we've done. Very basic examples, but you will see this when you go through the book. Some things look like they are the same, but if you really look at the words closely, they are not. So, for example, here we have our fruits and vegetables sections, and we have 15 of those. Then we have a follow-up activity where we suddenly introduce new words instead of recycling the same ones again. And then we had a follow-up activity where they bake with completely different products again. Right? And the reason for that was multiple people wrote it. And although we had lists, we all used what was most appropriate for that activity. So now we went back in and reduced the list to 12. And then we reused them. And then also we created a new activity instead of baking, where they're cooking, and all these things, all the fruits and vegetables that have been used are used in these recipes. So they're recycled. So now they're learning way less words. And then also, if you look at the text, and this will be possibly small for you, but you will get the slides later and can really do a one-to-one comparison word by word. You see here, we took a text. There were 4 glosses in the text. Now there are none anymore. Instead of berichtete, we say geschrieben. Instead of Notaufnahme, we say Krankenhaus. Instead of Verband, we say Organisation. Instead of permanente Parks, Freizeitparks. Instead of herausragend, sehr gut. Okay, so we really try to go back to the vocab they already know and reduce the words used. Same with this one here, Unfälle. 8 glosses before, 1 gloss now. The entire text is shortened. And all the content, everything that we said before, is still being said, just sometimes we use different words. Here as well, Stadtrat becomes Stadt. Befürchten becomes Angst haben. And then out of die Tafeln werden in Wien dagegen von vielen HausbesitzerInnen abgelehnt. We made, viele Hausbesitzerinnen in Wien sind gegen die Tafeln. Okay? So sometimes we also simplified the grammar in these texts, especially if they haven't learned them yet. Our previous approach was to expose them early on to them, but we all realized that we might have exposed a lot, and so we took it a little bit back. Or here, a very free activity about the car and different parts of the car changed to a very structured activity where all the words are given and matched, and all the words that you see here have been learned by the students. They know every single one of them. So the result so far is that if you look at the most frequently used words in the German language, that out of the 100 most used words, we cover 96% in Impuls Deutsch 1. Out of the 200, 87%, 500, 71%, out of the top 1,000, 55%, in the top 2,000, 42%. And I say so far because we now have a month left and we finish the book, and now we go back and identify which words did we miss, and we go back and still throw some out and put some others in, because so far we went from unit to unit to unit and reused them and made more frequently used words in there. But now it's our time to go back, so these numbers will even more increase. And then you see a second table below that doesn't say learned but seen, and there the percentage is a little higher. And the reason is that there are also some cognates that the students see and they clearly know what they mean, but they haven't learned them, right? Because they already know them because they're cognates. So if you include them, then the percentage is a little higher. The other thing that I need to say is that there's no data cleaning in this chart yet. And once we're done with the book and you are teaching with it, we will go back and analyze all of this and possibly also write a few papers about it. And then, of course, the data will be better prepared than it is for this spontaneous presentation. But for example, sein, we have as number 4 as auxiliary for the past tense. Ich bin gewesen, ich bin wohin gegangen oder sowas. And then we also have a sein, sein Brot, sein Hund, okay? And sometimes the software is not good enough to distinguish between those two. So it basically flagged it as learned from number 4, but not as number 30. So that's one of the, when you see here 98 of the top 100, it thinks we haven't learned one of the signs, right? So we have to go back and really clean the data and have a student, maybe a student in our program or an intern, go through and clean the data. So, but it gives you a trend of what we're accomplishing. And also, one thing to keep in mind, we have the Vertiefungseinheiten, the ones that you can choose, and these are not yet factored in. And many high-frequency words you will also find in there in Vertiefungseinheiten. Okay, so you might be wondering if you haven't taught with Impuls Deutsch, what are these Vertiefungseinheiten? So thinking about vocabulary, we wanted to have higher frequently used vocabulary, but we also wanted to stay flexible with the book and really have you decide what's relevant for your students so that a quarter of the units in the book are add-on units that you can choose to do or not to do. And you basically select those that match the interest of your students most. And then they're exposed to vocabulary that's relevant to their field and their interest, okay? And I will give you some examples and I will browse through them quickly, but you will get the slides and you can, of course, have a look. So I included them here so that you can later revisit them. For example, math, computer science, the binary system, physics, roller coasters and math, food chemistry, nutrition, food science, biology, and then with words like chemie, element, Reaktion, they're all in the top 1,000. Political science, history, sociology, lean production and business, poetry, literary studies and history, theater, the arts, literary studies, history, art, architecture, arts, urban studies, design, sociology, business. And you see, I selected purposefully activities and pages that many of you already know. But if you then later look at the slides, you will see all the changes that we've made to them. So they're very good examples of, on the first glance, it looks the same, but then you look at what the actual instruction is, and you will see how much has changed with the use of vocabulary in these. So changing the vocabulary that we use in the book also meant rethinking the vocabulary lists. So that's what we've done next. So first of all, we reduced the vocabulary list to one list. Previously, I don't know if you remember, if you're currently teaching with it, you will. There was a list that was called weitere Wörter. And these weitere Wörter we learned, only 1% of students actually learned. We were hoping more do. So we got rid of them. We merged them all into one list. The second change that we made is we are now printing the vocabulary list in the in-class book. We've learned that sometimes students want to look up the word, want to see the vocab list. Yes, they could access it on Quizlet, but otherwise it was in-blink learning and they couldn't find it easily if they didn't have the print workbook, which basically no one had. So we moved them over to the in-class book so they can reference them at any time in class and refresh their memory on the vocab they've just learned. Then we also visually highlight the frequency bands. So you will be able to see, and the students will be able to see, what are words that have a high frequency, which words are often used, and they're marked in the vocabulary list. And then we have special vocabulary lists that you will find at the end of the book, in the print version of the in-class book Machen. But you will also find them on Quizlet, and this is the most frequent 500, 1,000, 200 words that we use for each semester, etc., and different themes of vocabulary items bunched together. So you will see that as well. So here you see before, and here you see the not so popular weitere Wörter, right? Also pay attention that, for example, for the professions here, we use the female and male. In Impuls Deutsch 2, we didn't do that anymore. And the reason for that was when we published the first edition, there was some skepticism and like how much can we push versus not push, and how much do we have to adhere to more traditional publishing house versus not. So we were told we cannot use the gender Sternchen version here and the non-binary versions here. So we didn't. But after the success and after you all spoke and said, well, we want this and we like this, we did it for Impuls Deutsch 2, and now we went back and also did this for Impuls Deutsch 1. So this is how it looked like before. Now, the vocabulary list is just one, and this is just a snippet of it. So it's not less words, it's about the same amount of words. It's a little deceiving that I only did a snapshot, but I wanted to make it a little larger so you can see the dots. You see the green dot means it's in the top 1,000 most used words in German language. The black dot means it's in the top 2,000, so you can very easily see what are often used words in the German language. You also will see that we only have one entry for each profession now, and we're only teaching the inclusive word. And in Lernen, when the students prepare for class, they will learn how to take the inclusive and get to the binary ones. So they will learn how to get from Politikerin to Politiker and Politikerin, rather than the other way around, where we had all the binary ones in the vocab list, and then we're allowed to have a box to explain how to make it inclusive. Now we start with the inclusive, and we learn to then gender it if we need to. For example, if we have a group of male doctors that we want to stress that they're male doctors, a group of female doctors, or female scientists, or police officers, right? Yeah, so that's different. Then also we have some space in the print book to have visual lists of vocab. For example, here you see the one for Kleidung, and we have that for food items and different other categories. And depending on the theme of the chapter, we always bunch together and also have visual lists. And then also we have what we call Verben im Kontext, where we have all the verbs that are learned within a chapter with an example sentence from that chapter so that they can see it in context again. And then a list of all the Er-Wörter, S-Wörter, and E-Wörter, or der, das, and die Wörter that they learn in a chapter sorted by that. So I mentioned this before. We've always used inclusive language throughout Impuls Deutsch 2, but not yet Impuls Deutsch 1. We have used much more inclusive language than most books do, but now we really do it from the beginning to the end, what we believe in. And that means, for example, we usually use hier, but also explain that it's just one out of many options in all grammar tables, versus before When we talk about pronouns, we had a separate box that said, and here are the inclusive versions, but then in the grammar tables that followed, we didn't use it because we were told it's not official language, so we can't use it there. So we found a compromise. But now we don't have to find a compromise, and we just included them everywhere. As I said before, we have the gender star, but we also have that in the audio texts now. So the students learn very early on how to pronounce the glottal stop there as well. So they have examples. We have in Machen way more people who use additional pronouns, so not just sie, especially because right now there is an ongoing dialogue about which one and which are the alternatives. Should we use they? Should we use die? Should we use sie? And we felt like it was not the time yet to make a change because it's still so much in flux. But we are using way more different ones throughout the book so that it's very clear it's not just one. There are many options. Okay? And as I mentioned before, only inclusive terms for people and professions, and then they learn how to get to the binary. Here's an example of different pronouns being used in activity. I guess the they didn't make it from my conversion from Google Slides to the PowerPoint. And then here you see how we taught the professions before. We only had the Mehrverkäufer and the female Verkäuferin. And now we changed it where you see one example that's written, and that is sometimes the one with the gender star version, sometimes it's der, and sometimes it's die. And then the students have to add the other two versions to really learn to go back and forth between them, right? So that they got a lot of practice with it as well. So that's a change that we made. And these are just a few examples of many, many, many examples of how we use inclusive language throughout everywhere on every page. And we had reviewers who specifically watched out for that as well, because at some point when you read so many activities, you might oversee things, but we had a lot of input as well to improve that. We also updated a lot of images for more inclusivity. One of the changes, as I said, we are more in charge and more in control also means we are not purchasing all the pictures ourselves and choosing them ourselves and keeping track of them. That also meant we really try to be even more inclusive with the pictures as we were already before. I purposefully do not have a slide with you now to show you inclusive images because I felt like that would defeat the purpose to have some examples as a showcase of someone in a wheelchair or something like this. I didn't think that that was the right approach to it. Just go through the book and you will notice how there are more inclusive images everywhere. Another thing that's new, and now we move a little bit away from vocabulary and everything that has to do with vocabulary, is we have new warm-up weeks. We heard the feedback that when you start with the second semester and students are coming back from a long break sometimes, few weeks to the whole summer, depending on how your program is structured, to dive right in with chapter 5 was tricky for many students. They needed a buffer, they needed a refresher, they needed to remember again what they've learned last semester. So we created a whole new section, 4 units. Was haben wir schon gelernt? Ankommen und aufwärmen, where they review the vocabulary. Again, we'll focus on the most frequently used ones, but also the ones that are recycled from the previous semester and will come again in the upcoming units so that they are reminded of those again. But also the grammar, the structures that they've learned. So here we have Verben sammeln here, for example. Wörter, Wörter, Wörter with vocab games. So it's 4 complete units where it's just review. That's it. And then also we reimagined Impuls Deutsch 2 with 2 distinct sequences. And I will show you what that means. So if you look at the first edition of Impuls Deutsch 2, and that's the second year book for those who have never taught with Impuls Deutsch, the first half had the topics Ost-West, Nervenkitzel, Schweiz, Nachhaltigkeit. I mean, the titles are longer and include more, but these are the catchphrases, I would say, so that those who talk with it know what I'm talking about. And in the second half, we had Deutsch im Plural, Medien, Protest, and USA, Germany in comparison. Right? And then you also see the grammar. In the first half, our initial approach was, in the first semester, we want to teach the things we didn't get to in the first year. And then we wanted a semester the second half that brings it all together, everything they've learned together and going back and forth, for example, between the cases, between the different tenses, right? So the first semester was the finishing off, and the second semester was going back, bringing it all together, shuffling it. But the feedback that we received from our students and from your students was that many of them felt like the third semester was much harder than the fourth semester, because in the third semester was so much new. In the fourth semester, it was all review. Okay. And of course, the language improved in the fourth semester because they learned how to come from a sentence level to a paragraph level like they need for the higher proficiency levels. They learned how to write more complex sentences, but they didn't feel like, oh, I'm learning a new tense right now, right? And they did a lot of them in the third semester. So we shuffled it up. So in the second edition, now you see, and I use here the old numbers so that you know where things changed. So in the first half, we have Nervenkitzel, previously number 2, then Protest, previously 7, then Schweiz, previously 3, and then USA and Germany, previously 8. And then in the second half, we have Nachhaltigkeit, Ostwestdeutsch, and Plural Media. And what that does is each half now has 2 chapters that are mostly review and 2 chapters that are mostly new things. So it's more spread out across those 2 halves. Okay. We also did a few surveys and talked to you to hear what are the most popular chapters, and we put them in the beginning and at the end of the semester to get the students happy in the beginning and end. Of course, the entire semester, but especially happy in the beginning of end when it's time to stay in class and sign up for the next class. Okay? So that's also a change we made. And then we renamed them. So the first semester is Impuls Deutsch 2 Orange, and the second semester is Impuls Deutsch 2 Blau. They're still printed in the same book. The only difference is the banner on top are either orange or blue, so you can see in which part you are. So you're doing the orange part for chapters, and suddenly everything shifts to blue. Why did we do this? We learned that as German programs get smaller, there are many programs who cannot always offer a third and fourth semester every single semester. So what do you do if you're only offering a fourth semester and suddenly a student places into a third semester? You make them jump, or you find an alternative to an independent study, or the other way around. So now we created 2 distinct sequences, orange and blau. And we purposely didn't call them part 1 and part 2 because that still shows you, oh, first comes 1, then 2. But for orange, blue, it doesn't matter. Students can do orange first, or they can do blue first. So they can take fourth semester before third semester because they're completely independent. All the new grammar that's learned in orange is not being used in blau. All the new grammar and vocab that's used in blau is not being used in orange. Okay, and if a word is used in both, it's also studied in both. Okay, so one is not the prerequisite for the other. The prerequisite for orange is Impuls Deutsch 1, and the prerequisite for blau is Impuls Deutsch 1 as well. And if they finish both blau and orange, they're ready for the next year. So it's kind of like 2 puzzle pieces the students need to move on, but they don't need one puzzle piece for the other. Okay, so that's completely. That brings me to the next part, over 30% new and revised activities. And what we've done with Blau and Orange was one of the reasons for that, because now that we couldn't do things that they previously have studied before, and now they do it the other way around, and we shifted all the order of all the chapters and the grammar progression and everything, there were a lot of changes to the activities automatically. Like, for example, we introduced the passive and then comes a chapter, but now that chapter is before the passive. Oh, they don't know it yet, so we have to rewrite it, right? So part of that is that. But then also it's the frequency vocabulary approach. We made a lot of modification to the text, to the instructions, to really use all the words they know. There's way more scaffolding for activities. I still have a relatively high curve that's appropriate for the college level, but we lowered it slightly, 10% maybe. Also, important feedback we got is the grammar needs to be more spread out. Especially if you looked in the past through bilingual learning with like 20 activities for the first 2 units and then 3 for the last units of a chapter. That was because a lot of the grammar was front-loaded, they learned it, and then did a lot of applications. But now we spread it out way more. For example, the perfect, just as an example, used to be one unit where they learned everything about the perfect, and then they used it for an entire chapter. Now it's 5 units. They learn only the weak ones first, then they learn the strong ones. Then they review the weak and strong ones, then they learn the ones with the prefix and iren, then they do the mixed ones, and then they do them all together. So over 6 units, step by step by step, versus 1 unit with 4 videos and all they can possibly know about the perfect. And we made these kind of changes to all the grammar. So you also see the workload for the students to be much more spread out throughout the chapter rather than being very front-loaded in the beginning of a chapter. There's also more grammar application. As you know, our concept of flipped classroom is that the students really learn the grammar at home and then they apply it in class, often in authentic contexts with activities, but we have a few more grammar drills in classes as well, based on demand from teachers. Not many, but more than they were before. And of course, we made content updates. The world has changed, and so have the content. So we made content updates as well. And as I said before, BLAU and Orange are independent now, so we had to make a lot of changes to make that work. So all that together led to between 30 and 40% of new content. So this is, as Ernst Klett-Sprachen would call this, Impuls Deutsch neu. Okay. Good. So here's an overview for those who like numbers, how much is new. So you see we did the least amount of changes in chapter 8, only 15%. But for example, chapter 5 is 50% new. And the one that becomes before that is 100% new, because that's the new introductory chapter that you do before you even start with the second part of the book. And then for Impuls Deutsch 2, it looks like this. Of course, the chapter 0, the ones that are in the introductory chapter, which each part has 4 units that review Impuls Deutsch 1 and the relevant parts for that part of Impuls Deutsch 2 are 100% new. And then you see it's in the 24 to 44% of those changes. We don't know about chapter 4 because we're still working on it over the next 3 weeks, but it's also in the 30th. And finalizing that right now. So then we also have tripled the amount of audio material. We realized we had a lot of audio, but sometimes it's good to be exposed to even more. And especially we wanted more variations in the audio that we're hearing. Previously, we wrote the scripts and then speakers were invited into the studio in Stuttgart. So it was limited in terms of who do they know, who can come, who can do the recording, right? But now that we are doing the recordings and we are just hiring freelancers, we hired them from all around the world and have way more variety in what you hear. So that means for each text in Machen, each text that the students read, you can decide to just read it or have someone else read it for you. And there will be 3 audios with a regional variation every time, and a slowly read version as well for those who prefer a slower approach to the reading. Okay, so you will see this. There's the icon for each text where that applies. There are 3 audio symbols for audio 1, 2, and 3 that you can choose. And then we have 140 interactive grammar videos. That is a new feature of Impuls Deutsch 2. And some of you might think, wait a second, that was already part of Impuls Deutsch 1. So let me explain. So in Impuls Deutsch 1, officially we had the flipped classroom, and we thought it would be great to do that in videos, because flipped classroom, ideally you have instructional videos before you come to class. But we had no time. There was no time to write both books and do all sorts of videos before publication deadline. So we decided to only have grammar texts. But as soon as the book was published and we had time again, we started negotiating with Klett and said, we need videos. We need videos. And so we kind of talked with the publisher, Ernst Klett-Sprachen at that time, and they said, well, maybe we can do 30 videos. That's the most any of our series really has. And we negotiated to 60. But we kind of decided, well, why don't we just do as many as we need and not stick to a number? So what we did is, at that point, we delivered 60 to our deadline. And then we decided every month when we had time, every week when we had time, every half year when we had time, to develop more and more and more. We put placeholders. We made a list before what we want, and it turned out to be 100, almost 140. We made placeholders and where we felt like there could be another video needed. We put these placeholders in Blink Learning. You saw them. That was this, hey, there will be a video here soon. And that was created because the software doesn't allow to upload new content, but it allows you to change existing content. So if we didn't put in placeholders, we would have never been able to add any videos. So we had to do a placeholder video to replace one after one after one after one with a video. And now, after 2 years, out of 60, we're at 120. And by the time the book is published, we will have finished it. And all 140 videos will be there and it will be complete. And this will probably be the most extensive video series of any textbook. So for those who do not know any of these videos, let me just click here as well. You will see here we have authentic situations. We have characters, as you see on top, that are in situations where they're using the vocabulary. Very often the students on the left-hand side, you see that they see a situation, they see people running or screaming in this case, as you see on the left. And they're using the grammar. But then also we have explanations where they see a visualization, like here, the plate being put on the table, and now it's on the table. And then also the video stops at certain times where the students have to do activities in order to then continue. So again, some of you have seen this in the first edition, but now for the second edition, we're done, and it's the content is ready. Oh, let me pause the singing. So it will be 140 videos. We had 6 co-authors who helped write them in the beginning. It's 302 pages of manuscripts, 31 different voice actors, and 588 minutes of video that the students get to enjoy. And this is again across Impuls Deutsch 1 and 2. So this is 2 years. So the students are not sitting for an hour watching videos. It's spread over 2 years, okay? But very comprehensive with lots of examples. But what are we doing with the grammar summaries that we had before? Some students do like to look at a written summary of the video, and we're now printing them in Machen. So the students have them in class, and if they want to reference them, they can open it because it's at the end of each chapter is the grammar for that chapter. And it also tells them what the number of the video is in case they want to see the video again. Like here, wie heißt du, wie heißen Sie? Then it says video 3a and Lernen. They can go to Lernen, watch the video again if they like, right? So that's new as well. It's not on Blink Learning, and they cannot really access it, and it doesn't expire anymore, which was an issue before. What if you want to start and review the grammar 2 years later when your license for Blink Learning on AutoCAD Workshop Hub expired? Now that's printed in book, they can always have a look at the grammar afterwards. Which brings me to the last point. The CLET World Languages Hub. For some of you, the moment you've been waiting for, as was I, that we finally have a new platform and do not have to deal with Blink Learning anymore. And I have a few in the audience actually who have helped make the KWL Language Hub better this year by reviewing it and giving feedback. So you can also share what has improved compared to Blink Learning for those who haven't learned taught with it before. It's getting late. Okay, so here are just a few snapshots, but also I've created content in the KWL Languages Hub. I've not taught with it because I was on sabbatical to focus on the second edition. So if you're in the audience and you want to share more things, write it in a chat. If I'm not covering something that you feel like is so much better there and I forgot it, write it in a chat. On the hub, you can create assignments, which the workflow in Blink Learning was very different. You can share it with others instructors. So it depends on if you're a department where everyone does their own thing, you just create your assignments and that's it. You reuse them as semester, you assign them to your students. But if you have a big department with, for example, TAs or language coordinator, you can create assignments that are kind of locked and you can share it with other teachers, and the teachers or TAs cannot make changes to them. They can only assign them and grade them, but they cannot choose what's in there. They cannot choose what attempts are there. So you can kind of choose your approach. Do you want to have everyone have freedom and create their own assignments, or is there someone who creates for the others in a coordinator kind of position? You can then assign the homework to groups of students with deadlines. You can choose if they can skip parts of it, if they have multiple attempts or not. You choose how many attempts. You can also put in a custom message. So you can say if they're between 100 and 95%, you can say, gut gemacht, or something like this, and then it will appear on the screen. You can also choose to reassign homework to a single student with an extended deadline. So if you, for example, feel like a student didn't quite get the instruction or wasn't in class and needs more time, you can just select a student and give them more time for an activity as well. If you then look on this in the student's view, you see under upcoming assignments, I don't know if you actually see my cursor. I think if I do it like this, maybe laser pointer. So under upcoming assignments, you see a list of the assignments is sorted by due date. So the students always know, okay, I have to do Zeigen 20 for German 101 in spring 2025. It's due on the 29th. It has 3 activities. When the students do the activity, you get statistics. You will know how much time they spent on the activity, for example, etc. And they see what they missed, what was submitted, and can also look at what was graded. We get out of the laser pointer mode. The list also includes overdue activities. So I just logged in as a different student who didn't do some activities. So you see it flagged as the student, and you can choose as the instructor, do you allow them to hand it in late, or do you not allow them to hand it in late? That's your choice. So there are a lot of options, a lot of settings for you that you can play around with to really adjust the hub to your own context and your beliefs. The students can view their score and get notifications when they receive feedback. So in Blink Learning, the feedback was really hidden. The students had to actively search for it, click an activity and see if there is something. And if there's nothing, okay, they might have come back the next day and check if there's something. And in reality, no one has ever checked anything and no one has ever read any feedback. So here you actually, as a student, get a notification that says, you have been provided feedback by your teacher for da-da-da. And then you click on it and you get right to the feedback. So you always know. So the feedback that you're writing is not lost. The student will be notified of that feedback and they will see it. Also, grading is so much faster, I've been told. My colleague said 5 times. I don't know how you would quantify it if you had taught with it, but that's what he said in a meeting. The big advantage is that you see all the homework for one student on one screen. So if there are 5 or 6 assignments, you see all of them underneath each other. You can jump through them, grade them, click to the next student. Loading times are much faster. You write at the next student and you grade the next one. Rather go activity by activity by activity by student by student by student. So the workflow is much, much faster. You also have a very adjustable gradebook with many filters. So you can choose to show activities from one unit or one chapter or 1 week of class or 1 semester, and it always gives you the average grade for those assignments that are currently visible on the screen. And what's visible on the screen, you choose by using the filters. And by the way, talking about grades, points are different now. Before that, if there was an activity where the students wrote an essay, or they just had to put in 1 word, they counted the same. Now they don't. Essays give more points, words are less points. So each activity has a different points value that affects their grade. The grades can also be exported and you can impersonate a student. So if a student comes to you often and says, I couldn't see this homework, or I didn't see this, or didn't say that. You go to your roster, you click on the student, you impersonate them, and you see exactly how they see the platform. And you can walk through it with your students without them having to log in your office. Or even if you're at home, you can send them an email saying, here's a video. I logged into you as you and your account. This is how it looks like for you. And I click here and you can send them a video. So it's much easier to support the students because you can be your students as well. The system allows us to embed closed captions for all the videos. We would have loved to have subtitles for the interactive videos in Blink Learning, but there was just no feature for that. We couldn't do that. So now we can, and there will be subtitles for every single video in on the KWL Language Hub. You can also adjust the speed for all audios and all videos. And you can connect the hub with major LMS like Canvas or many others. Some features, some of them you have a lot of features. Some it's limited to like a single sign-on. Some you can do the deep linking to activities on your LMS, and I'm sure Katrin and her team, they will be happy to tell you what you can do with your platform with linking it to it. But you can link it now. So we're at 56, so we're good in timing. I know I was talking quickly because I really wanted to tell you all that's new, so that you have a broad overview. And then, of course, once you have the book on your hand, you know what to look for, and you will find all of these changes all over. But we talked about the vocabulary list, inclusive language, images, new warm-up, new Impuls Deutsch 2, new activities, etc. So now I'm looking forward to give you the microphone, and I look forward to questions.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Nico. There are a couple of questions. I was able to answer some of them. But there's a really good one, and I actually had somewhat the similar question, and it is so for Impuls Deutsch 2 second edition, the blue and the orange pathways. The question is, will those be interchangeable? So can I do, one chapter from the blue, and then maybe I'll pick another one from the orange pathway? Or will students miss out on vocabulary and structure? So is it more of a mix and
They
match, or
will.
we stay
Yeah.
within the pathway?
Yeah, so you should ideally stay within the section. So if you are in orange, you should stay in orange. If you stay in blue, if you do blue, you stay in blue. That's not to say it's impossible. If you help students with some of the structures they haven't learned yet, but it may, for example, be that you are starting a chapter that reviews all the cases in German, but the genitive is in the other part. So it's not that you can't do it. You might just do one lesson on the genitive and provide them a worksheet, and then they will be fine, right? But if you stay within the sequence, you don't have to think about it. Everything that the students do, they know everything that is being reviewed here, and it's building one box on top of the next one. But that's not to say it's impossible, but I wouldn't recommend it unless you really have a preferred order, or you're now so used to your current order. Give it a try with the new order.
That's awesome. All right. I have another question from Petra, and that me as a haven't taught with Impuls Deutsch, I would have the same question. So she was using the second edition, and right now when the students are doing the interactive video activities, in Blink Learning, we used to have the little red dot. So as teacher, I could like kind of see what they are. Right now, she said that she can't really see them anymore, and if they're being reintroduced or what the solution there is.
Yeah, so how it works with the interactive videos, and please also, as I said, this is a community project. Give feedback on how you like the process. I'm answering your question in a second, but what we've learned from the new platform is that they're very, very, very open to feedback. Sometimes we gave feedback about Blink Learning and no one ever did anything. Here we make suggestions, for example, oh, a student didn't understand the activity of missed classes, but you can't reassign it to the student. And 4 weeks later, you could reassign, right? So that means if you feel like the interactive videos should look a certain way and you have ideas to improve it, send me an email and I will work on it. Okay, that's unlike in Blink Learning where you send an email, but no one cares. Okay, so I wanted to say that first. But with the standard settings that we're using for the interactive videos on the KWL Language Hub right now, the process is the following. The students start the video, and they do see something, I forgot what color it is now, but equivalent to the red dots where they see if there are activities and where they are. The students cannot fast forward, so they're required to watch the videos, which was also the setting in Blink Learning until they changed it, that teachers also had to watch the whole video in order to be able to get to activity 2 grade. So they, in order to make this work, they had to take this out for everyone. So students now could just jump ahead and only do activities without ever watching the video. But that's not what we really want. We really want the students to watch the video. And then do the activities based on what they've just seen. So this setting right now is they watch it, they get to a dot, it pauses, they do the activity. Once they're done with the activity and they submit it, they can continue. They can always go back anywhere in the timeline. They just cannot skip ahead. And once they've watched the video once, they can jump back and forth within the video, but not beyond what they've already seen. That's the setting right now. If the majority of schools says, oh, we don't mind if the students, jumps to just the activities, that could be changed. But right now we decided from the consensus of the offering team and most of the prototype testers right now that this is the preferred way to do it. But that's 5 universities and you're 150. So if suddenly 145 say the opposite, we can absolutely change it. So please make suggestions.
Wonderful. And then there's another question about the video ECA videos. What, if any, changes have been made to that, in particular in regard to the new vocab lists and in relation to contents of the chapters?
You mean the videos and in terms of how they changed?
Um,
You cut out for the beginning. Somehow my audio didn't work. Changes.
I'm there. Yeah,
Able
so
to
I'm just gonna
right
read the
first.
question. So what, if any, changes have been made to the video ECA?
A
Right, to
video.
those, yeah, to those videos, if any, and are there specific changes with regard to
Yeah.
the new vocab lists and also in relationship to the content of the chapters?
Yeah. So the video echo, we didn't re-record any of the videos. That might be something for the third edition for us to do. We kept the videos that we had. What we did, however, is we shortened them. We sometimes put them at different places within the chapter, and we adjusted the vocabulary, not the videos to the vocabulary, but the other way around. So we made them learn words to understand the videos better. And especially for Impuls Deutsch 2, we shortened most of the videos by more than 50%. So we have entire parts of the speech being taken out and work with much less material. For those who did the prototype testing, you don't know that yet because the new cut version of the videos doesn't exist yet. That's going to be my job after the manuscript is being handed in. But we already have the manuscripts marked in terms of which sections will be deleted and what will the videos be looking like afterwards. And they will be reduced, but they will not be new videos.
Okay, great. There's another question about digital access. I can actually answer that. I'm just going to answer it for everyone. With the KWL Hub, we do have the option to tailor it a lot better to your students. So yes, we will offer 6, 12, 18, and 24-month access. And you tell us which access you want your students to have, and then we'll go that route, okay? Another question is, if you take chapters from different series, I'm assuming Impuls Deutsch 1, maybe first edition or second, I'm not sure. They would also not have the vocab necessarily. Is that correct? I'm not sure what is meant by different series.
Yeah, I might need a clarification. The vocab has been completely changed. So if you look at the vocabulary list, I would say, I mean, in some chapters it's not like this because, of course, the first few chapters have, ich wohne, ich heiße, and then comes the fruits and things. But the more we move forward, you will see a drastic shift in the vocabulary towards more high frequently used words. And we also adjusted the texts based on that. So if you, for example, don't like a new version of a unit and you use the old version of the unit, if you stick within the unit, and if you give the appropriate vocabulary list, let's say you do on unit 4, the new version, you give the vocab for the new version, you get the right words. And then you do the old version of 5, but you also give the vocab list of the old version. You also get the right words for that unit. But what you're not getting is that each unit was analyzed based on what words did they already learn in previous units. And that's, of course, based on the edition you're in. So if you're doing Unit 5, it assumes you've done Unit 1 to 4 of the new edition.
I'm going to tag on to that question because I think a lot of it, it's okay, Victoria. A lot of questions that I'm anticipating is also, Nico, how would you, I see a lot of returning, Impuls Deutsch users. How would you recommend a switch from Impuls Deutsch first edition to Impuls Deutsch second edition? What would your recommendation be?
Yeah, I would start with the second edition as soon as possible. This fall. There are a few of you, and maybe you're in the audience, you want to say something, who have not done the second edition of Impuls Deutsch 1, but jumped to the second edition of Impuls Deutsch 2 because that was the opportunity that was offered to you. And please say if I'm misrepresenting this, if you're in the audience. But from what I've heard so far, it worked for them because in Impuls Deutsch 2, it's just easier throughout. That even though Impuls Deutsch 2 second edition is based on the vocab that has already been learned in the second edition of Impuls Deutsch 1, and that's now different, it's overall so much easier that it's still the better choice to switch over to the second edition. And for Impuls Deutsch 1, I mean, you can just switch over. I think the question is more for 2. What about next semester? Students have done the first edition. The second edition of 2 is out. Should I just go to the second edition? I would still do it. Again, it assumes the new vocab, but in the old one, we didn't have a vocab tool. So, yeah.
Yeah. All right, we have lots more questions. There are captions for all videos, which is great. Are there any kinds of captions or transcripts for the listening text? Yes.
Yes, of course. There will
And
be provided to the teachers on the hub. When you are in the teachers editions, you will have the transcripts of everything, and then you can decide if and how you distribute it. If you want all the students to have it, if you only want to give it to select students who need it. There are different approaches. Some teachers like for their students to all have the transcripts. Others prefer for the students to really focus on listening and not have any visual support and can read, and only give it to those who need it, who can be so important with it. But that's your choice. But we will provide them all to you for every audio, every video.
yeah, there's a really important question about accessibility, and as your sales rep, I fully understand. So the question is, currently in Blink Learning, the embedded images for longer text and excerpts is an accessibility nightmare. Will the new interactive workbook be fully accessible?
You might hear my brush your teeth sound because my husband is brushing teeth with the kids, and he does not realize that it plays in the entire house. But I will make it as low volume as I can.
That is
Um,
adorable.
so yes, so in the first edition, and I hope I understood correctly. If not, please let me know. There were texts, especially reading texts, that were images. And initially, when this was set up, it had two reasons. One of them is there were so many activities that had to be transferred over from the print book to Blink Learning. And we had a very, very, very short turnaround time that was nearly impossible to even do, but we kind of managed that. It was easier for us to take a screenshot of the text rather than to get the text over with all the formatting errors that automatically occurred when we tried to copy and paste it all over. But also some that we asked some of our consultants liked the idea of having images because it prevented students from copy and pasting it into translation software and getting the translation and get the answer based on that. But then we learned very quickly that it was a nightmare for those who needed accessibility because screen readers could not read the images. So we completely moved away from it. Everything is now a text, and the text can be read by screen readers, so the accessibility issue is not there anymore. Students can, of course, now copy paste it over, but I think that kind of issue is a thing of the past anyways, because now they can take a screenshot of anything and ask AI and get help. So if it's an image or text, doesn't make a difference. But it makes a big difference to our students who need accessibility and need screen readers, and it's all moved from images to text. I hope I got the question right. If not, you got some other useful information, but please then ask the question again if I misunderstood.
Uh, I I think you got the gist of it. Here's a very interesting question. Will there be an Impuls Deutsch 3 for advanced learners? And in what sequence will the textbooks and workbooks be reworked? Because right now we reworked the whole Impuls Deutsch series after, about 5 years now. It's been 5 years. Is that gonna remain? And then is there gonna be Impuls Deutsch 3?
That's a question that I cannot really answer. I mean, with Impuls Deutsch 3, I don't know. If there is a demand, that could be. With the next edition, we kind of imagine there to be about the same distance between just the first and second edition. But of course, that's dependent on the publisher, of course, like what languages, and has to do with print runs and all of these things that are beyond what we do. Um, but I believe that this is a big second edition. It's almost like it's not rewriting the book, but there's so much new and so much changed based on feedback, and also us now having more or less complete control, and the oversight we have are experts and reviewers, right? That we really took that opportunity. And also I had a sabbatical, so I really could spend an entire year on it, that I don't think the next edition will be this big. I think it will be more of an overall updating what happens in the world kind of update, because we have a lot of authentic texts. Of course, they all have to be changed and be updated every 4 or so years, let's say. But I don't think we will do in 4 or 5 years a complete overhaul again like we did now. It will more be an update, and I can imagine that to be like a 4-ish time frame if it was me who decided that. But it's, of course,
Sounds
Gladwell language decision.
Here's another question more related to grammar-focused activities. Will there be, will we find a couple more solely grammar-focused exercises in the second edition or whether not?
There will be. There will be. I mean, that was something that was requested by teachers who said, we understand the flipped classroom, but sometimes we do want some more grammar activities in the class, and we've done that. A good example is for the type of activity at the top of my head now. We have the Wende activity mit nach dem Plusquamperfekt, where they have all the different events of the Wende, and they have to put two of them always together and say what was first and what happens afterwards. So it's a content activity and has to do with what we teach in content-wise in a chapter, but it's a very focused grammar activity, right? And these kind of activities we have more throughout the series, but we still didn't want to move too far away from our concept, which is really more, you study the grammar, you practice the grammar in the before class book lernen, and then you come to class to do something that's meaningful to you. And sometimes working with grammar is helpful, but not as meaningful. So we still wanted to not completely redo the concept, but we do have more of these activities in there.
Great. Will you continue with the Tatort-Duff sequence in Inputs Deutsch 2, second edition?
Yeah, we are continuing with part of DAF. One change that we made is in a survey, we found out that teachers thought there was too much time between the different units. And for those who don't know what this is, in the second book, Impuls Deutsch 2, students are reading a Tatort-Duff easy reader. And in the beginning, there's a unit that explains what the different cities are and what the concept is, and they talk a little bit what Tatort is, and then they choose a book. And then they do some kind of guided reading where they have questions each day that they answer at home about what they're reading, and then they come to class and share. Everyone in class in groups who reads a different one. They talk about their characters and their stories and their solution, kind of across, I think it's 4 or 5 units. And previously it was 1 unit a week or so. So they read a little bit and they talked about it a week later. They read a little bit and talked about it a week later. And the feedback was it was too far out. They were much faster with the reading, and most students were waiting for talking about it again. So now it's basically 4 or 5 consecutive units. So They have one where they find out about the context and they order their books. And then there's a week or so in between, but then there are 4 or 5 units right after another where they just talk about the book and then they close that. So it's still in there, but moved closer together in these units.
Wonderful. We'll go ahead and answer the next question. Impuls Deutsch first edition will not be available on the KWL Hub. It will remain on Blink Learning in the time being.
Yeah.
And in the new edition, for the additional audio, is there any sort of provision for an occasional like drill type of exercise so that students have, a more guided learning via repetition?
Not in Machen. So what we have with the new audio is, and again, if I misunderstand your question, please let me know. Um, we have a lot more audio now, and much of that audio is in the in-class book Machen, where we have the texts that are being read to the students. But the students don't necessarily do much with the audio itself. They do something with the text, and now they just hear it while they're reading. But what we did is we recycled the same audios for the workbook. So sometimes the students are already exposed to the text that they will read and hear in class, but they do a much more structured activity with just 2 or 3 sentences from the audio where they identify something or do something with. Or the other way around, they've read a text and they've answered questions about the text in class and they have the opportunity to listen to the audios, and that's really your choice. I mean, you can make them just read the text. You can decide to play one of the 3 audios to them based on what you're interested in. You can play, maybe even do an activity and say, hey, let's listen to 2 of them and see if the accent of the second one is different, right? And compare and contrast. So that's really your choice. But we have some of these activities in Zeigen then where they go back. They'll now listen to the audio for the first time if they haven't yet. The teacher chose not to play it, or they listen to it for the second time and they do a structured activity with it. But that's not happening in Machen. That's happening in Lernen.
Another really good question. Will there be Quizlets?
There will be Quizlets. We're also still exploring options and let us know for other tools. We're also using Know It now. Do you say Know It? That's how it's written, I think. I don't know how to pronounce it. Know It. So we basically copy all the sets over. But we also learned that, I mean, Quizlet is a third-party tool. We use Quizlet, and that's why we're happy to provide the sets. But we cannot make these sets mandatory because there is a fee associated with all tools that have been freebies and now they're not anymore. And any tool that we switch over to might be a freebie now, and at some point they will charge. So make a choice if you want to use Quizlet, but we will still provide all the Quizlet sets. The students have access to it. We also do Know It sets now. And if you have a third tool that you really like and feel like we should all be using, we can also create sets in another tool. For the prototype testing, what we've done is we created an activity in the workbook every day at the beginning of the homework saying, here's the vocab set for today. Please study it. And we used Quizlet for that. We say, here's what it looks like. Here's where you have to click. Make sure it's all learned. Your teachers can see, your instructor can see it. And then they also have like a button where they have to click, I've studied it. I studied all of them. I clicked on all learned and blah, blah. It looks exactly like that. And they submit it, and then they get points for that. And this is just because we felt that before, when the vocab was, a button on the bottom in Quick Learning, but not really integrated as an activity, not every student did the vocab, and some of them didn't know how to find it easily. And now it's easier because the first thing when they open the homework is, oh, I have to study the set. And they go there and they confirm that they studied it. And in the prototype testing, we only use Quizlet for that. But before it's published, we will actually change this, and it will say, please follow the instructions of your instructor and the tool that they recommend for you to use, which could be Quizlet, which could be Know It, which could be just writing cards and showing them in class. And then basically they confirm, instead of right now confirming the steps of Quizlet, they confirm that they followed the instructions of the instructor. And within the activity hour, we are linking the Quizlet set and we are linking the Know It set. And if you want a third thing to be linked, and if there's a consensus in the community what the third thing could be, we can link all 3 and just say, here are the 3 links. click on the one that the instructor told you to click on to give more freedom and
That's
not
what.
force Quizlet on them.
Yeah, I have another question about the answer keys and the teacher's manual. So we know right now there are no, printable or downloadable answer keys for neither Lernen, Machen or Zeigen. Is that going to change? And if a teacher wants to just work with print, um, and also what will the teacher's manual look like?
So the teacher's manual will look not exactly like the first edition, but very similar. It's slightly different because it's a different tool, different format, different buttons, different ways to access the tabs. But basically, it looks like the student edition. But for every activity and for every unit, you will have a button you can click on with tips that tell you how to do the activity or give you an additional link, or sometimes gives you some ideas of what to do after or before an activity, or if you just want to dive deeper into a topic, what other things could be done. Um, that will be similar. The solutions will be printed on there, but it is digital only right now. And that is a decision that Clapboard Languages made. I mean, for us, it's the same. We're producing it and it will be put online. If you all say you would rather have it printed, you can suggest that and see what happens. The manuscript is there, but right now it's only digital.
And how about Kahoots?
Kahoot exists and will be changed, and also there will be Kahoots for Impuls Deutsch 2,
Oh, that's
which
exciting.
right now it's only for one. Yeah.
All right. Most of the other questions are related to the KWL Hub, and we're gonna just move them up because we want to focus on content here a little bit and leave the tech side aside. And if there, let me double check. There's no questions left in the chat. All the questions in Q&A are with regards to the KWL Hub. And yes, Tina is asking, can I start Impuls Deutsch 2 second edition if I used Impuls Deutsch 1 first edition in the first semester? And you
You
already
can,
answered that with yes,
you can
please go
absolutely
ahead.
do
Yeah, please go ahead and do so.
it. It will assume words that they've learned in Impuls Deutsch 1, which have slightly changed, but the vocab approach is so much better and the progression is so much better and it's overall easier. You will benefit from just switching to the second edition.
All right, so that was all the questions.
And
This
also,
is
if
when,
there are
yeah.
hub, we can talk about the hub. And also, we have a few people in here. I mean, I don't see the complete list, but I see a few who have actually taught with the hub. If they want to share things that I forgot that they liked about it, they can share as well. And I notice every time I'm freezing when I'm going to the appendix list, it's not on purpose. The video freezes when I go out of the presentation.
I was about to say you just froze and I got a little
Yeah,
worried.
it's just when I click
Everything.
to Zoom, then this happens, and then I'm back.
So I guess one of the questions about the hub, and I already know that you were not able to do that right now, is, that creating homework assignments, yes, it's definitely easier than in plain learning. And then the question is, can you set automatically that grades or scores for certain activities will be lowered by like 10% for each day the assignment is late or has been
Yeah,
missed?
it doesn't work right now. But I did see the roadmap of
Mhm.
the hub, which is also in part because I have a dedicated group of prototype testers right now who are in the hub and who gave a lot of valuable feedback on what could be improved. And I always send that along. And then I have a document where I see what made it, and what's being worked on. And that is one thing that's being worked on, where there will be an automatic deduction for late submissions. When that will be live, I don't know, but I did see it on the roadmap before the start of the next semester. So hopefully that will happen. There's a lot on the roadmap, but in the past they've been very quick with the turnaround. So I'm positive that that will happen. But yeah, it's on the list. I saw it.
I did too. I haven't checked lately, so I was like, I don't know
Yeah,
how far out it is. There will be significant changes to the KWL Hub after the summer. Right now we have a lot of K to 12 schools using the hub, so there's we're limited in the amounts and kinds of changes that we can make without messing with their grades. And so, we want to say that. I also wanted to mention that, as a question that was raised earlier, that after the presentation, we do have a list of participants, and we know who you are, and we will be sending out free demo access to the KWL Hub so you can have a look at what is there currently. Um, the problem is that please keep in mind that it is very much a work in progress and under construction currently. Nico is, updating and uploading as we go. And so, you might not see all the features already, and some things that are missing. So just be aware of that, and keep that in mind when you explore the KWL Hub and, Impuls Deutsch second edition on there as well. All right, I saw another one. That sounds menacing. All right, so I'm gonna say if there are no other questions, um, we know who you are. I know, Jake, you know me. Um, all right, I'm going to go ahead and say, well, thank you so much, Dr. Traxdorf Nico, for this wonderful presentation and the great Q&A. Thank you, everyone, for your wonderful questions. Those were really good questions for me as well to learn about.
Yeah,
And
thank you very much for spending the evening with us. And
absolutely.
also, please visit our Slack community, which has been very active. It has changed a little bit from publicly sharing to a lot of people talking to each other in the background. So if you have anything, that you want to share, and if you have questions, come to Slack because your questions can help others as well. And I'm sure once everyone is teaching with the second edition, we will all help each other and share slides again, like we did for the first thing. And one more thing I completely forgot. There will be a set of slides for every single unit that will be living in the teacher's manual that if you like, you can just project in the class and go teach. So we will be creating slide sets for every unit for you. I completely forgot about that.
That's great. Um, so I think this is it. I really do appreciate everyone and especially your time, Nico. And we look forward to seeing you at the Clever Languages webinar again in the future. And please enjoy your evening or have a wonderful day, depending on what time zone you're in.
Tschüss.
Tschüss.